Support Paws and Support Gear by Sunset Cougar. Chapter 11. Welcome to UA. Trigger warning for mental health issues this chapter. Izuku swallowed nervously as he and Mei made their way to the 1H dorms. They had arrived a bit early so they could avoid the big crowd of other students, but even so, there were a few around. None of them paid either of them any attention though. Support course classes were smaller than other courses due to the space required in the classrooms, and thus, the dorms were built differently. The actual rooms were on the top 2 floors, while the 2 under those were empty, at least originally. Each class added and changed things on all floors to be more to their liking while they were there, so support dorms were way better than any of the others. The only area that they were required to completely clear out were the bedrooms. Izuku's room was the closest to the elevator and stairs on the floor, and Mei was on the girls' side of the same floor.
Come on, Uzu. Let's go get unpacked,
Mei called, snapping the green-haired boy out of his thoughts. He smiled and followed her to the elevator. Once they got to the floor, they parted ways. Izuku opened his dorm room door and flicked on the light. The walls were pre-painted dark green, just like his bedroom at home, and there were several boxes in the center of the room, between the bed and desk. They contained all of the things he had shipped ahead of time. Izuku shut the door, took off Clover's harness, and pulled out his pocket knife to start opening boxes. When he was done setting up, his room looked almost exactly like his room at home. Izuku put Clover's harness back on and left the room. Hello. Looks like we're neighbors. Izuku turned to find the source of the deep voice, and had to look up. Standing just outside of the open door next to Izuku's was a pale boy, who must have been at least 6 feet tall. He was built like a brick wall, had warm brown eyes, and bear's ears in place of human ones. His short, shaved hair was a mix of white and light brown, and he had some stubble along his jaw. His arms were covered in white and brown hair, and he had curved black claws on the ends of his fingers. He obviously had some form of bear quirk, though Izuku didn't know of any bear with those colors.
I guess we are,
Izuku agreed. He stepped closer to the other boy and held out his hand.
I'm Midori Izuku.
The boy shook it, his hand practically swallowing Izuku's. His palms and fingers had rough black pads.
Toe beans,
Izuku whispered under his breath without thinking. Bjorn laughed, a deep booming sound, and exposing sharp teeth that furthered Izuku's bear quirk theory. Tough Bjorn. I like your dog. She's very cute.
Thanks,
Izuku smiled.
Your name doesn't sound Japanese. Were you not born here?
Toph shook his head. No, I was born in Sweden and moved here last year.
Cool. Do you have a bear quirk? Your ears, claws, and teeth look like a bear's.
Toph nodded. My quirk is Growler Bear. My mother has a polar bear quirk and my father a grizzly bear one, so mine is a mix of both. Izuku's mind immediately started going a million miles a minute.
That's so cool. Is it just a mutation, or is there a transformation or a emitter aspect to it? How strong are you? Are your claws really sharp?
He cut himself off.
Sorry, I was rambling. I know most people find it kind of creepy.
Toph laughed again. It's fine. No one has ever been so interested in my quirk before. I can turn into a growler bear. There's no emitter aspect as far as I know. My strength is a little less in this form than my other, but I've never measured it. And my claws are as sharp as a polar bear's. Izuku nodded along as he explained.
That's really cool.
Toph smiled again. What's your quirk? Izuku immediately prepared himself for laughter, rejection, and disgust.
I'm quirkless.
Instead of the usual reactions, Toph's eyes only held interest. Really? I thought there weren't any quirkless people in Japan.
There are, Izuku said, relaxing a little bit. Just not many. Probably around 1% of the Japanese population is quirkless.
Oh, that's pretty much the opposite from Sweden. Only about 3% are quirked there.
Really? Izuku knew that the quirkless population was higher in other parts of the world, but the lowest quirked population he had ever seen in his research was about 50%. Then again, he had really only looked up places like America, Central Europe, Australia, and Canada, and hadn't thought to look up places like Sweden. Toph nodded.
Yes.
Any further conversation was cut off by Mei bounding into the hall. Come on, Izu, hurry up. I want to explore and see what the past classes have left us, Mei said excitedly, bouncing in place. Izuku laughed, said goodbye to Toph, and followed her to the elevator. Of course, the first place they went was the floor directly under them. The first thing Izuku noted was how different the layout was. The entire back half of the room had been sectioned off from the rest, and the front half was lacking any walls. They had all been replaced by sturdy beams. The close left corner of the room was filled with various arcade machines, from pinball to Pac-Man. The close right corner was sectioned off with clear plastic, and inside they could see an entire, obviously self-sustaining greenhouse. In the far back corner of that was a mannequin. Izuku got an odd shiver up his spine when he looked at it. It was just so out of place. He quickly put it out of his mind. The back half of the room, behind the walls, looked like a disco club, complete with a DJ booth, 2 disco balls, and floor tiles that could no doubt light up. Someone was already at the DJ booth. It was a short boy with an obvious mutation quirk that gave him a long black tail with gold stripes that looked like lightning bolts, and gold spikes along his spine and tail, all connected by a thin black membrane. His spiky hair was electric yellow with black stripes, and he had 2 black and gold horns on either side of his head. His eyes were gold, he had fair skin, a petite figure, and gold talons on his fingers. Both his feet and digitigrade legs were dragon-like, with patterns like his tail. He didn't show any sign of seeing either Izuku or Mei, too absorbed in the booth, so they opted to leave him alone as they continued to explore. The floor right above the common room was next. The far left corner had been turned into a miniature theater, complete with a popcorn machine and a dozen plush seats. Somehow, the far right corner had been converted into a raised pool, and when they looked at the water-proof control panel next to it, they learned that it had a jacuzzi setting, the option to add bubbles, and a dozen other buttons whose labels had been ripped off. The close left corner was sectioned off with walls, and was a sort of library/study corner, complete with plush chairs and shelves. It had a sign on the outer wall stating that it was soundproof for maximum relaxation/productivity. The close right area had multiple small booths, and a VR helmet in each. Practically buzzing from the excitement of their new living space, Mei and Izuku went down to the common area, which was by far the most plain of all the floors. It had a kitchen which had obviously been beefed up a little bit, a few tables, and a TV in the one corner. And on the other side of the courtyard were the bathrooms and laundry machines. Izuku wondered why the bottom floor had been left almost completely alone, while the upper ones had been changed so drastically. Izuku jumped and whipped his head towards the tables when he heard a scream. Standing on top of one, looking like he was about to have a heart attack, was a boy with short, curly black hair, hot pink eyes, medium brown skin, and a solid build. He also had 2 fuzzy nubs poking out of his head and the ears of an animal Izuku didn't recognize. They looked similar to a deer, but not quite. Standing on the floor, completely ignoring him, was a large ball python. "Someone get rid of it before it bites someone!" the boy yelled, pointing at the snake. "Don't you dare hurt Athena," a tall girl with bob black hair, red eyes, tan skin, and a statuesque figure said. She had a pair of long antennae on top of her head, and 4 brown wings that looked red in the bright lighting. She scooped up the python, Athena, and started stroking her scales.
Why are you holding it? The boy shrieked. She's mine, the girl said, wings fluttering a bit. And she's the sweetest thing in the whole world, aren't you, baby? She started cooing and baby talking to Athena. The boy looked horrified. A reptile can't be cute. The girl raised an eyebrow. Well, she's definitely cuter than you. And if a reptile can't be cute, what does that say about you? Immediately, several students started laughing, and a couple yelled, "Burn!" Izuku laughed with them, but even as he did, he couldn't help but wonder how many of them would hate him the moment they found out he was quirkless. Hey, May? Izuku asked as the class made their way to their rooms that night. Nobody seemed interested in dinner, probably due to the excitement. Yeah? May replied. Can you stay with me tonight? I'm not feeling the best mentally. Of course! Come on, let's get to bed. About an hour later, they were curled up together in Izuku's bed, Clover at Izuku's back. Most people would think they were in a relationship if they saw a boy and a girl cuddled together like this. But for the two, it was purely platonic. Izuku took comfort in the contact, and May was glad she could help her best friend. She didn't fully understand his depression, but she had done enough reading to notice the symptoms and know how to help if he was feeling down. Chapter 12, First Day, Part 1. Trigger warning for minor violence. Izuku groaned as the annoying beeping of his alarm clock drew him out of sleep. He slowly opened his eyes, groaning again at the sunlight that had slipped through his curtains. He wanted to keep sleeping. Then he remembered where he was, sat up, and put on his glasses. May had spread out like a starfish in her sleep, half on top of Izuku with one arm wrapped around him like he was a teddy bear. She was also dangerously close to the edge of the bed. May, wake up. Izuku shook her shoulder and she blearily opened one eye. What's going on? She slurred, still half asleep. It's our first day of UA. Come on. That woke her up. She sat up so quickly she fell off the bed, hitting the floor with a thud. She bounced to her feet and grabbed her uniform off the chair she had left it on the night before, going to the bathroom and shutting the door. Izuku swung his legs over the edge of his bed and stood up, leaning against the chair May's clothes had been on. He grabbed Clover's bowl, food, and meds from their spot on the shelf, put a scoop of the kibble into the bowl, put a piece of the joint medicine on top, and set it on the floor. Clover immediately dug into it, tail wagging happily. Because she was a mobility service dog, she had a lot more strain on her joints than a pet, so the medicine was to help prevent any problems she might develop because of it. While she was eating, Izuku took his own medicine before getting dressed. He frowned as he struggled with his tie before giving up. It was good enough. Are you dressed? May called from the bathroom. Yeah, Izuku called back as he grabbed Clover's harness off of the shelf at the top of his bed and put it on her. May exited the bathroom and they left his room to get their breakfast. Chaos was the only way to describe the common room. People were ducking around each other, making sure they had everything they needed, eating or doing some combination of the three. Izuku and May shared a look before descending into the chaos. Their mission? Retrieve cereal, milk, and fruit. Izuku yelped loudly as a tail suddenly smacked into the back of his legs, causing them to buckle and sending him crashing to the floor. I'm so sorry, the owner of the tail said immediately. He was the boy who had been at the DJ booth the day before. I swear I didn't mean to do that. I'm fine, Izuku groaned as May helped him to his feet. His tailbone ached, but it wasn't any worse than his normal chronic pain, so he just ignored it. He had gotten good at functioning while in pain since he had jumped. That's good, the boy sighed in relief, the rigid tail along his back relaxing a bit. Anyway, I've got to go get some stuff from my room. See you later. With that, he ran off up the stairs. Luckily, there were no more setbacks to May and Izuku's mission, and they were able to eat in relative peace. When they were done, they still had plenty of time to spare before class began, so they were able to take their time getting there. "Hello," a cheerful, deep voice called. A moment later, Toft started walking next to them. He pointed at May. "I don't think I've met you yet. My name is Toft Bjorn."
That's me, May.
May greeted cheerfully, shaking Toft's hand, which effectively covered hers. "Are you excited for classes?" Toft asked. "I know I am."
Hell yeah!
May and Izuku agreed in unison. "So what did you build to get into 1H? Toft asked. "I built a sword that can fold into a box the size of a phone."
Gloves that let you stick to things like a gecko. A mask that can mimic voices.
"Those sound very impressive," Toft praised. "I look forward to working with you."
So do I,
Izuku replied with a smile. Izuku sighed as he settled into his chair, his legs and back aching worse than usual from the walk. At least UA had elevators, so he didn't have to worry about having to use the stairs every day. That would have been a nightmare. He placed Clover under his desk, and she settled down for a nap. The classroom was large, with massive windows along one wall that let students see outside. The room was on the fifth floor and faced out towards the ocean, so they got a really good view. The teacher's desk looked more like a workstation, with a podium in front of it and a chalkboard above it. The desks were arranged in rows of 4 or 5. In 4 rows of 5, with each table, like desk, taking up the space of 2 normal ones. Each desk was fitted with storage space underneath, easily accessible power sockets, a stand that could be puffed up from the front of it, pulled up from the front, presumably for holding blueprints, and a case on one side full of tools. It was really nice. It didn't take long for all the 1H students to enter the classroom and find their seats. A few started chatting to each other, while others stayed quiet. Izuku was at desk 9, and the desk next to him, number 4, belonged to a girl with straight, shoulder-length jade green hair with vertical teal stripes, umber brown skin, and an hourglass figure. He couldn't see what color her eyes were, since she was keeping her gaze firmly locked on her phone, and her hair was forming a curtain around her face. She was giving off a strong vibe of "don't talk to me," so Izuku left her alone. The desk in front of Izuku belonged to the boy with the nubs on his head that had freaked out about the snake the night before. He had his head resting on his arms and was snoring quietly. May sat directly behind Izuku. Soon enough, the classroom door opened again, and the Pro Hero Power Loader entered the classroom. He stood behind the podium, and the class quieted down. "Hello, everyone. Can someone please wake him up?" Power Loader asked, gesturing at the boy in front of Izuku. The girl next to him, who had shoulder-length dark blue hair with silver tips, dark purple eyes, fair skin, a willowy build, and long fangs that hung out of the corners of her mouth, leaned over and shook the boy's shoulder. He snorted and sat up, rubbing his eyes. "I'm awake," he mumbled, focusing on Power Loader, who smiled at the class from under his helmet. "Now that everyone is awake, my name is Majima Higari, aka Power Loader. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'll be your homeroom and support teacher for the next 3 years. First, we're going to go to orientation, and afterwards we'll come back here so I can run over a few things. Now, to the auditorium." The class stood and followed Power Loader out of the classroom and down the halls, which was packed with other students and teachers. The auditorium was equally packed, with almost all of the chairs filled. There was, however, an obvious hole where a class should have been, but wasn't. Izuku knew that spot was 1A's, but they wouldn't be joining the orientation since, according to Hitoshi, Shota always used this time to test his new class. By that he meant torture his new batch of hopefuls, because 1A students weren't truly students until they made it through Shota's hazing. A few minutes later, Nezu, who was standing on the podium on the stage, started talking. It quickly became clear that neither Izuku nor Mei would be able to sit still through the entire speech, and neither would most of their classmates. The boy with the nubs, which Izuku guessed were probably the beginnings of antlers, had already fallen back asleep, and the boy with the tail was fidgeting, his leg bouncing and tail twitching. Mei tapped Izuku's hand to grab his attention. She had her phone out and opened the app that controlled a drone the two of them had designed. SPYONCAT. Mei tapped out in Morse code on Izuku's hand. It was a very outdated language, but they found it useful. Cat was their code name for Hitoshi. All three of them had one. Mei was owl, and Izuku was dog. Mei started the drone, and on screen the view moved up as the attached camera did. It was easy for her to maneuver it out of her room via the window she had left open, and high enough that they could get a good view of UA in order to find Hitoshi. Once they spotted Class 1A on one of the training fields, Mei guided the drone to perch on a nearby wall to watch them. It consisted of different exercises, apparently to test each student on the use of their quirk, as well as their creativity in the cases where their quirk wasn't a direct help. Hitoshi already seemed to be on a few students' bad sides, as he was using his brainwashing to get students whose quirks were suited to a certain task to help him. Izuku was sure if they knew his quirk was voice-based, they would immediately stop talking to Hitoshi, but he was good at giving out little red herrings for the activation requirements, including things like tapping their shoulders or making eye contact for a few seconds. At one point, he straight up slapped his hands to one boy's cheeks, idiot sandwich style. It also appeared that Hitoshi had put on his hero persona. He had mentioned it to Izuku and Mei before, but they hadn't gotten to see it in action yet. Judging by the looks everyone was giving Hitoshi, and the bubble of space around him, it was working. Izuku purposely ignored Bakugo. Soon enough, the endurance run test rolled around, and Mei made the drone take off so they could track the class from the air. Except once it was in the air, the drone stopped following Mei's commands. She frowned and was about to try to land the drone when it suddenly jerked to one side and started spiraling towards the ground. One of the students spotted the drone and yelled, "Look out!" just in time for Shota to turn around and be struck in the face by it. Izuku and Mei shared a horrified look as they watched Shota fall to the ground. He sat up a moment later, one hand pressed over his cheek. His fingers had blood on them. Shota picked up the drone and examined it, eyes narrowing when they fixed on Izuku and Mei's logo, a pair of interconnected gears with Hatsudoria ink printed on them. "We're screwed," Mei whispered under her breath, and Izuku nodded in agreement. Chapter 13, First Day, Part 2. Trigger warning for minor violence. Hitoshi got to class much earlier than all of his classmates for the sole reason that his parents drove him. They had decided that since Shota and Hisashi had to drive to UA every morning anyway, it would be easier if they just brought Hitoshi along with them, instead of having him go on his own, or deal with the hassle that would be moving him into the dorms. So, when Hitoshi got to 1A's homeroom, it was completely empty. That worked out fine for him, since it was early and he was tired because insomnia sucked. He took off his jacket, folded it up, and put it on the floor between his desk and the wall before laying down to nap. The jacket made a decent pillow, and soon enough his exhaustion caught up to him. The next thing he knew, he was waking up to the unhappy yelling of a tall boy with blue hair and eyes, and square glasses. Hitoshi blinked up at him, still groggy. "What?" he muttered. "I was saying that it is very inappropriate for a UA student to be sleeping on the floor," the boy said, waving his hands in an odd chopping motion. Hitoshi sighed and put his arm over his eyes. I don't care. I'm tired. I'll get up when class starts. Hitoshi heard the other boy sputter in offense. Then he started lecturing again. Hitoshi took his arm off of his face and sat up to press one finger to the other boy's lips. Shh, stop talking. I don't want to hear it. I barely slept an hour last night. Let me have this. The boy looked even more offended. By then, the argument had drawn the attention of pretty much everyone in the room. Drama attracted teenagers like honey attracted flies, after all. Hitoshi put his arm back over his eyes and laid down again, sighing as the boy started lecturing him about proper sleep schedules. Finally, he stood up and glared, projecting an annoyed, intimidating aura. There, I'm up. Happy? Hitoshi grumbled. He was about an inch shorter than the other boy, but he knew how to hold himself to appear bigger. It was part of what he called his hero persona. He gave off an aura that made people hesitant to approach him, and spoke sharply with a constant tone of annoyance. Now shut your mouth and leave me alone. I'm here to be a hero, not to make friends with fools who have sticks so far up their asses I wouldn't be surprised if they can taste the bark. Luckily for Hitoshi, he was saved from any further lecturing by the door opening and Shota entering. He declared that it took them 8 seconds to settle down, which was unacceptable because time was precious. He then ordered them to put on their gym uniforms and go to the training field. Hitoshi changed in a shower stall to avoid talking to anyone. He was the first onto the grounds. It didn't take long for the class to gather, and when all 20 of them were out, Shota got their attention and explained what they would be doing, a quirk test. Hitoshi wondered how long it would take his classmates to start avoiding him after this. Bakugo, Shota said, pulling out a ball. How far could you throw in middle school? 67 meters, Bakugo replied. Hitoshi's eyes narrowed. Bakugo. That name sounded very familiar. Hadn't Izuku mentioned a Bakugo once? Great. Now try it with your quirk. I don't care what you do, just don't leave the circle. Bakugo threw the ball with a massive explosion, and it clicked. Bakugo. Explosion quirk. That was the kid who told Izuku to take a swan dive off the roof. Hitoshi grit his teeth, anger suddenly boiling in his veins. He glared daggers at Bakugo as Shota told him his score. He really wanted to punch that smug smile off of his face, but that would get him in so much trouble. Hitoshi forced himself to tune back in as Shota threatened expulsion on whoever placed last. Hitoshi knew he wouldn't place last, not as long as he could get his classmates to respond to him. The first event was a 50-meter dash, and after the blue-haired boy, who was named Ida, had gone, Hitoshi approached him and tapped his shoulder. Hey, can I talk to you for a moment? What? Hitoshi didn't even let him finish the first word before he took control, making eye contact with the boy at the same time. Follow me. Hitoshi ordered Ida when it was his turn. He guided Ida to stand at the starting line and carefully climbed onto his back, climbing on like a koala. Run as fast as you can to the end of the track when Izawa says go. Ida did as he was commanded flawlessly, giving Hitoshi a pretty decent time of 5 seconds. When that was done, he released Ida, who blinked and immediately turned to Shota, accusing Hitoshi of cheating. How did he cheat? This is a quirk test. Shinso used his quirk. Hitoshi smirked at Ida's expression. Looks like he already had his enemies. The rest of the test went quickly as Hitoshi brainwashed different students to help raise the score. A boy with 6 arms for the strength test, a frog-like girl for the standing long jump, no one for the sidestepping, a girl with the gravity quirk for the throwing, and then came the endurance rung. The only warning any of them got was a girl with pink skin yelling, "Look out!" before a drone fell from the sky and hit Shota in the face. Hitoshi had to bite his tongue to keep himself from crying out. Shota sat up, one hand pressed to his bleeding cheek as he picked up the drone. Hitoshi's eyes narrowed when he spotted the familiar logo on the drone's side. Of course it belonged to his friends. "What are you doing?" Shota asked, glaring at the students as he stood up, setting the drone beside him, one foot pinning it, and opening one of the pouches on his belt. "Get running!" A few people were still a bit hesitant, clearly worried about him, but an even fiercer glare and a flash of his quirk had them running. Once Shota had patched up his cheek, he sent a text to Nezu about the incident. Mei and Izuku were sweating as Nezu paused his speech when his phone buzzed. He pulled it out and read whatever was on it before speaking. As soon as the school day is over, Midoriya Izuku and Hatsume Mei are to report to my office immediately. People started muttering to each other, wondering what not one but two students had done to get sent to the principal's office before the opening ceremony was even over. At his place at the edge of 1H's section, Power Loader groaned and dropped his head into his hands. Of course it was his class. It was always his class. A little while later, 1H was back in their classroom, at their desks. Power Loader clapped loudly to draw attention to him. "Hello. Now that the opening ceremony is over, I have a few things to say before guidance sessions begin. The first thing you all need to know is that at UA, we prioritize the safety of our students above all else. If any of you feel like you're in danger, just call me or come on campus and the other teachers and I will protect you. That means that if any of you are in the closet and fear what could happen if your family finds out, just tell me and I'll tell the other teachers so we can use safe pronouns and names when talking about you to or around people you're not out to. And on that topic of identities, if anyone wants the other uniform, whether it be for gender or just comfort, I'll be happy to get it for you. Now, on to lighter subjects. I'm sure some of you have already been acquainted, but we're going to have an introduction anyway. I want you to state your preferred name, quirk, preferred pronouns, and something interesting about yourselves. We'll go in seat order. The girl in the first seat was the one with the wings from the common room. When she shifted, her sleeve slid up her arm a bit, allowing Izuku to see a blue exoskeleton on her lower arm.
My name is Okidorika, and my quirk is called Tarantula Hawk. It gives me the wings, antenna, and a little bit of the exoskeleton of a tarantula hawk wasp, as well as venomous stingers in my wrists. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I have a pet ball python named Athena.
The next kid was practically bouncing in his seat. It was the dragon-like kid who had knocked Izuku over. My name is Mizuno Etsuo. My quirk is lightning trait. Basically, the spines on my back absorb electricity for me to store. My current limit is about 2 million volts before it starts to have severe side effects. My pronouns are he, him, his, and my favorite food is dragon fruit. The next kid had chin-length, dark blue hair with silver tips. Her eyes were dark purple, her skin was fair, and she was willowy. She also had long fangs that stuck out of her mouth and hung down to her chin.
I'm Ni Ayumi, she said quietly. My quirk is hydrokinesis. I can control up to 50 gallons of water at once. My pronouns are she, her, hers. My fangs have nothing to do with my quirk. My dad has a Smilodon quirk, and it's a mutation I inherited from him. The girl in the front seat looked up, her hair falling away from her face and letting Izuku see it. The first thing he noticed was her eyes. They were light gray, and the dullness of them, paired with the deep bags under them, said she was exhausted both mentally and physically. I'm Kawakami Jade, and I'm quirkless. Izuku immediately sat up straighter. Another quirkless person in his class? The odds of that happening were almost non-existent. That also explained why she looked so tired. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I won't take any crap from anybody just because I'm quirkless.
Don't worry, UA has a strict no bullying policy, Power Loader said. Kawakami rolled her eyes, and Izuku barely heard her muttering,
Everyone says that.
The next girl was slender, with porcelain pale skin, wavy waist-length white hair, and silver eyes. Instead of speaking, she held out her phone, and an automated voice said,
My name is Arata Tsukiko. I am mute, so I use this or JSL to talk. My quirk is called Marionette. If I touch someone, I can make a marionette doll of them, which I can use to control them. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I like camping.
Next up was Toft. My name is Toft Bjorn, and my quirk is called Gorilla Bear. It lets me turn into a grizzly bear polar bear hybrid, as well as giving me a few mutant traits. My pronouns are he, him, his, and my favorite food is falukurv. The next girl grinned widely as she introduced herself, leaning back in her chair. She had unevenly cut, armpit-length hair that was darker gray on top and faded to pale gray at the tips. Speckled throughout it were spots of various shades of gray. Her eyes were such a dark blue that they were almost black, and when she smiled, she exposed oddly shaped teeth. Her skin was tanned and covered in freckles, and she was sturdily built.
I'm Uchiyama Kasumi, and my quirk is called Leopard Seal. It lets me turn into a leopard seal. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I like skateboarding.
Last but not least of Izuku and Mei's new classmates was the boy that had jumped on the table to escape Okita's python. My name is Nakano Rin, and my quirk is called Moose. I can turn into a moose. Pronoun-wise, I'm gender fluid. He held up a wrist to show a blue bracelet. So when I'm wearing a blue bracelet, I'm male, and use he, him, his pronouns. And when I'm wearing a yellow one, I'm non-binary, and use they, them, theirs. My favorite food is mayonnaise. Mei bounced slightly in her seat as she introduced herself.
My name is Hatsume Mei. My quirk is called Zoom. It allows me to zoom in on things. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I can't wait to make a ton of super cool babies.
She means inventions, Izuku quickly interjected.
She calls her inventions babies. My name is Midoriya Izuku, and I'm quirkless.
He didn't miss how Kawakami's expression turned interested when he said that.
My pronouns are he, him, his, and one of my favorite things to make are tasers.
It's wonderful to meet you all, Power Loader said with a smile. I hope this year will be a success. Now, Hatsume and Midoriya, go to the principal's office.
Alright, y'all. I really hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I want to take a moment to apologize for not uploading in a while. I had both the flu and strep, so I was kind of hit with a double whammy and could barely talk for a while. But I'm like 90% better now, so I wanted to at least make 1 or 2 episodes today. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And I look forward to seeing y'all in my next video. Ciao for now.